I accepted a marriage contract with a millionaire. On the wedding night, he found out I was a virgin. Imagine signing your name on a piece of paper that will change your life forever. For Clara, it wasn't just a decision. It was survival. Standing there in a dress she didn't pick, surrounded by strangers, clapping with practiced smiles. She felt like an actor in someone else's story. The weight of the ivory silk and lace hung heavy on her shoulders, but nothing compared to the invisible chains binding her to Victor Lamos, the millionaire whose towering presence filled every corner of the room. This wasn't love. This wasn't even choice. It was a contract, a desperate thread pulled tight to save her family from ruin. But what happens when the man who thinks he knows everything finds out something about you that shakes his entire perception? What happens when, on your wedding night, you confess the one truth neither of you expected? Victor Lamos is not a man used to surprises. His world is built on control, precision, and power. To him, Clara was supposed to be another transaction, a decoration for his empire, a wife on paper to charm investors and keep appearances intact. He saw her as someone who had played this game before, someone who knew how to trade innocence for wealth. But as the honeymoon suite door clicked shut behind them, the air thick with tension, Clara's trembling voice revealed a secret that would unravel everything Victor thought he understood. I've never been with anyone," she whispered, raw and unsteady. Those words hung between them, like a storm waiting to break, and in that moment, Victor froze, not because he was angry, but because he didn't know what to do with honesty, so pure, so unexpected. Clara's confession wasn't planned. She hadn't intended to let those fragile words slip out. But standing there under Victor's piercing gaze, feeling small and exposed, she couldn't hold them back. Her vulnerability cracked open something inside him, something he wasn't ready to face. For the first time, Victor saw her not as a pawn in his game, but as a real person, fragile yet brave, scared yet defiant. Yet, this newfound awareness didn't come without its own complications. As much as Victor wanted to dismiss her sincerity, he couldn't. Instead, doubt crept into his mind. A flicker of curiosity about the girl who refused to fit into the role he'd assigned her. Was she truly as innocent as she claimed? Or was there more to her than met the eye? These questions lingered, unanswered, creating a tension that neither could ignore. The setting only added to the intensity of their encounter. The honeymoon suite was extravagant. A marble floor, silk-draped bed, and a balcony overlooking a glittering cityscape. But none of that mattered to Clara. All she could focus on was Victor's proximity, the scent of his cologne, and the way his sharp jaw tightened as he processed her admission. For Victor, the opulence around them faded into the background too. What stood out was Clara herself, the way her hands trembled, the tears brimming in her eyes, and the quiet defiance in her voice. In that charged moment, the boundaries between duty and desire began to blur. They were bound by a ring and a signature, but something deeper was stirring beneath the surface. Something neither of them fully understood yet. As the days passed, Clara found herself navigating a world far removed from the one she knew. Victor whisked her away to his sprawling estate, where gardens burst with roses and lavender, and the mansion gleamed with polished stone and glass. At first glance, it seemed like paradise, but Clara quickly realized it was also a gilded cage. Every corner of the estate spoke of luxury, but it wasn't hers. Not really. Still, amidst the grandeur, moments of connection began to emerge. Small, fleeting glimpses of the man behind the mask. There was the morning Victor cooked breakfast, his sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes with surprising ease. There were the afternoons spent walking through the gardens, where he pointed out flowers he thought she'd like. And then there were the evenings, filled with silences that weren't empty, but alive with unspoken questions. Each interaction chipped away at the walls Victor had built, revealing a side of him Clara hadn't anticipated. But trust doesn't grow overnight, especially when fear looms large. Clara often wondered if she was still just a convenience to Victor, a means to an end. When she finally gathered the courage to ask him why he agreed to the marriage, his answer chilled her. "Convenience," he said bluntly, explaining that a wife looked good on paper for investors. Yet, when she pressed further, asking if she was merely convenient too, his response caught her off guard. "No," he admitted, his voice low and almost hesitant. "You were a surprise." That single word hung between them, loaded with meaning. A surprise. Not what he expected, not what he planned for, but undeniable all the same. Even as their bond deepened, uncertainty lingered. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in, driving Clara to seek refuge in the library. Surrounded by shelves of books and the warmth of a crackling fire, she found solace in the quiet. But then Victor appeared, raindrops clinging to his hair, his shirt damp from the downpour. Seeing him like that, less untouchable, more human, caught her off guard. Their conversation that evening took an unexpected turn. When Victor revealed him, a piece of himself, the library had been his mother's sanctuary, a place she loved. As he spoke about her kindness, his voice softened, betraying a vulnerability Clara hadn't seen before. It was in that moment, watching the flicker of pain cross his eyes, that she realized just how complex Victor truly was. Beneath the cold exterior lay a man shaped by loss, burdened by expectations, and yearning for something he couldn't quite name. By the time the storm subsided, the air between them had shifted again. Riding horses through the estate, stopping by a serene lake, sharing laughter over simple pleasures. These experiences wove a delicate web of intimacy neither had anticipated. Yet, despite the growing closeness, unresolved tensions remained. On the terrace one evening, Clara voiced her fears aloud, admitting she no longer wanted to leave, but didn't know where they stood. Victor's response left her breathless. "You've undone me," he confessed, his hand cupping her cheek. "Every plan, every wall. You've torn them down without even trying." His words carried the weight of surrender, of a man grappling with emotions he couldn't fully articulate. But just as things seemed to settle into clarity, a new question arose. What did this mean for their future? Were they building something real, or was it all still tethered to the original contract? And so, as the days turned into weeks, the line between obligation and affection continued to blur. One crisp afternoon, Victor returned from the city with a small box in hand. Inside was a ring, not the formal force symbol of their initial agreement, but something new, delicate, and perfect. As he slid it onto Clara's finger, his voice rough with emotion, he declared, "I didn't choose you that first day, but now every day I choose you." The gesture was heartfelt, profound, but it also raised questions. Could a relationship born out of necessity truly transform into something genuine? Had they crossed the threshold from duty to love? Or were they still finding their footing, with the sun dipping low and painting the sky in hues of amber and rose? Victor pulled Clara close, holding her as if she were the anchor he'd been searching for. But as the stars emerged above them, the audience is left wondering, will their fragile bond withstand the challenges ahead? Or will the past they tried to escape catch up with them? The estate had become their sanctuary, but it wasn't without its shadows. Clara often found herself wondering what Victor truly wanted from her. Was he trying to protect her, or was she still a piece in his larger game? His world was vast and complicated, filled with people who seemed to move like pawns on a chessboard. Each maneuver calculated for gain. She'd overheard snippets of his phone calls, sharp words exchanged with investors, terse negotiations late into the night, and, while she didn't understand all the details, she could sense the pressure weighing on him. It made her question whether their growing bond would survive once reality crashed back in. Victor's past began to creep into their present in ways neither of them expected. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace after dinner, Clara noticed him staring at an old photograph on the mantel. The image showed a younger Victor, standing beside a woman whose smile lit up the room. "That's my mother," he said softly, catching her gaze. He rarely spoke about his family, so Clara listened intently. Through halting sentences, he revealed how her kindness had clashed with his father's ruthless ambition, leaving Victor caught between two worlds. "She taught me love doesn't have to be transactional," he admitted, his voice breaking just slightly before he masked it with a cough. Clara saw the boy he must have been, a child yearning for approval, yet afraid to show weakness. It deepened her understanding of why he built such impenetrable walls. But not everything was quiet introspection. Tensions flared when Victor received news that threatened to unravel everything they'd built. A rival businessman, angered by one of Victor's recent deals, had begun spreading rumors about Clara, whispers that painted her as a gold digger, manipulating Victor for his wealth. At first, Victor dismissed the accusations, brushing them off as petty gossip, but the attacks grew louder, more insistent, until even Clara started hearing murmurs during their outings in town. Strangers looked at her differently now, some with pity, others with disdain. For the first time since arriving at the estate, Clara felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't anticipated. The breaking point came during a charity gala hosted at the estate. The event was supposed to showcase Victor's generosity, but instead it became a stage for confrontation. As guests mingled under crystal chandeliers, one particularly bold man approached Victor, his tone laced with mockery. "How does it feel, knowing your wife is just another investment?" he sneered, loud enough for nearby ears to catch. Clara froze, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. Victor's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing dangerously. Before he could respond, Clara stepped forward, surprising everyone, including herself. "I'm no investment," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "And if you think I am, then maybe you don't know Victor as well as you claim." The room fell silent, and though the tension lingered, something shifted. Clara had stood her ground, proving she wasn't going to let anyone define her, not even those closest to Victor. Still, the incident left scars. That night, as they lay side by side in bed, Victor turned to Clara, his expression unreadable. "Why did you defend me like that?" he asked, his voice low and almost hesitant. "You didn't have to." Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I believe in us," she finally said. "And because I won't let anyone tear down what we've built, not even you." Her honesty struck a nerve, and for a moment, Victor looked lost, as though he were grappling with emotions he couldn't quite name. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. It was the closest he'd ever come to admitting he needed her. As days turned into weeks, new challenges emerged, testing their resolve. Clara discovered letters hidden in Victor's study, correspondence hinting at a deal gone wrong, one that could cost him, not only financially, but also personally. The stakes were higher than ever, and Clara realized Victor had been shielding her from the full extent of the danger. When she confronted him, demanding answers, he snapped. "This isn't your fight," he barked, his frustration boiling over. "You've already sacrificed enough for me." Clara refused to back down. "Don't shut me out," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "If we're in this together, then let me help you. Trust me." Her words hung in the air, raw and unyieldingly true. For a long moment, Victor simply stared at her, his defenses crumbling. Finally he nodded, defeated but grateful. Their partnership took on a new dimension. As they worked side by side to navigate the crisis, Clara's resourcefulness surprised even herself. She dug through documents, pieced together clues, and offered insights that helped Victor see solutions he'd overlooked. In return, Victor opened up further, sharing parts of himself he'd kept buried for years. They weren't just husband and wife anymore. They were allies, equals bound by trust and determination. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts lingered. Could their fledgling relationship withstand the storm brewing outside? And what secrets still lay hidden within Victor's empire, waiting to shatter the fragile peace they'd fought so hard to build? The climax loomed closer with each passing day. Rumors swirled about a secret meeting Victor planned to attend, a negotiation rumored to make or break his company. Clara begged him to reconsider, sensing the risks involved. But Victor remained resolute. "This is my burden to bear," he insisted, though his eyes betrayed his fear. On the eve of the meeting, Clara slipped into his office, finding him hunched over papers, his face pale with exhaustion. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she murmured, "we'll face it together." Victor didn't reply, but the way he clung to her spoke volumes. Morning arrived too soon, casting golden light over the estate. As Victor prepared to leave, Clara handed him a small charm bracelet she'd found among her belongings, an heirloom passed down from her grandmother. "For luck," she said with a shaky smile. Victor fastened it around his wrist, his fingers brushing hers, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt right. But as his car disappeared down the driveway, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead was darker than either of them imagined. Victor's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. "I love you." 3 simple words, yet they carried the weight of everything they'd been through. The struggles, the doubts, the moments of quiet connection that had slowly stitched their lives together. Clara felt her heart swell, tears spilling down her cheeks as she clung to him, knowing this wasn't just a declaration. It was a promise to face whatever came next, side by side. But even as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside refused to stay silent for long. The next morning brought news that shattered the fragile peace they'd built. Victor's phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, pulling him away before sunrise. He returned hours later, his expression grim. "It's worse than I thought," he admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The rival businessman, who had spread rumors about Clara, wasn't done. He'd uncovered old skeletons in Victor's company, threatening to expose them unless Victor agreed to step down from his position. It wasn't just Victor's reputation at stake. It was the livelihood of thousands of employees who depended on him. Clara watched as the man she loved transformed back into the guarded figure she'd first met, his shoulders tense with the burden of responsibility. Clara refused to let him shoulder the weight alone. She dug deeper into the documents Victor's had shown her, piecing together clues and finding patterns others might have missed. Late nights turned into early mornings as they worked tirelessly, their bond growing stronger with every challenge they faced. One evening, while poring over files in the library, Clara stumbled upon something, a hidden ledger detailing illegal transactions made years ago by one of Victor's former partners. It wasn't enough to clear Victor completely, but it was a start. When she showed it to him, his eyes widened with shock and then gratitude. For the first time, he saw her not just as his wife, but as an equal, someone who could stand beside him without faltering. With the evidence in hand, Victor confronted his rival during a high-stakes meeting. The room was tense, filled with powerful men whose gazes shifted between Victor and the accuser. Clara waited outside, her heart pounding as she listened to muffled voices through the door. Finally it opened, and Victor stepped out, his face unreadable. "We won," he said simply, pulling her into his arms. The rival had backed down, realizing the truth would destroy them both if exposed. Relief washed over Clara, but she knew their fight wasn't over. Not entirely. In the weeks that followed, Victor worked to rebuild his company, implementing reforms to ensure nothing like this could happen again. Clara supported him every step of the way, proving herself indispensable, not just as a partner, but as a voice of reason and compassion. Together, they visited factories, met employees, and listened to stories of hardship and hope. Slowly, the walls around Victor began to crumble, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. He no longer saw his wealth as a tool for control, but as a means to uplift others. And Clara was the one who had shown him how. As spring arrived, painting the estate in vibrant colors, Victor surprised Clara with a trip to the countryside. They rode horses along familiar trails, stopping by the lake where they had shared so many quiet moments. Sitting on the grass, Clara turned to him, her eyes soft with curiosity. "Do you ever think about where we started?" she asked. Victor smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Every day," he replied. "And every day, I'm grateful for how far we've come." Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. The marriage that began as a contract had blossomed into something real, something unbreakable. Victor no longer saw himself as a man, defined by power and control. He was a husband, a protector, a dreamer, and Clara, she had found strength she never knew she possessed, proving to herself and to Victor that love wasn't about convenience. It was about choice. On their anniversary, Victor led Clara to the gardens, where a small gathering of friends and family awaited. Beneath a canopy of twinkling lights, he held her hand, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "When I signed that contract, I thought I was saving my empire," he said, looking into her eyes. "But what I didn't realize was that I was saving myself. You saved me, Clara. You taught me how to live." Tears streamed down her face as he knelt, presenting her with another ring, a symbol of renewal, of a love that had grown beyond anything they could have imagined. The celebration that followed was intimate and joyful, a reflection of the life they had built together. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Clara leaned against Victor, feeling the warmth of his embrace. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who had trembled on her wedding night, unsure of what lay ahead. That girl was gone now, replaced by a woman who had learned to trust, to love, and to fight for what mattered most. Their story wasn't perfect. Scars remained from battles fought and lessons learned. But those imperfections only made their bond stronger. They had proven that love could bloom even in the darkest places, nurtured by honesty, vulnerability, and unwavering support. As they danced under the stars, surrounded by laughter and music, Clara knew one thing for certain. She had found her home, not in the estate or the luxury, but in Victor's arms. And so, their tale became more than just a romance. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the beauty of transformation, and the enduring strength of love. For anyone watching, it served as a reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single, uncertain step, and that, even in the face of adversity, love has the power to change everything.